Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Theater Near You. My name is Kris Randazzo, and I'm joined this evening, as always, by President of the Wilford Brimley Fan Club, Paul Giroux.
Watch Clark, and watch him close. He ate my Quaker oatmeal, and he took my diabetes medication.
And disembodied spider head thing, Sean Doyle.
What? What will come out no more?
This month's letter was T, and my co-host here decided it was time for me to watch The Thing. Does this classic thriller still pack a punch? Let's find out. But first, how are you, gentlemen?
Let me tell you guys, if way back when we started this podcast, when we did the letter A, if you had asked me, Paul, how many movies do you think you will suggest that have Wilford Brimley in them? I would not have said definitely more than one. That would not have been my answer.
So I was thinking about that too. I know we haven't gotten to Chris's question or any of our intro crap, but I was thinking that too when I realized Wilford Brimley was in this. I was like, there must have been at least one other actor that's been in two movies we've watched, right? Or is Wilford Brimley now in a commanding lead?
I don't know.
I got to go back and look now.
Yeah,
Sylvester Stallone.
We watched
Sylvester Stallone. We watched like 6 movies of his.
Well, yeah,
but that was all like that was
we only
one
picked
episode.
Rocky. Yeah, we only picked Rocky.
Well, there's only been one Rob Schneider. There's only been one Pauly Shore.
Which is a problem. There should be more Pauly Shore.
Obviously, the demand is there.
All right,
like
I'll have to
without more
IMDb everything
Schneider.
and like start a board. You know what I mean? Like start a like
a crazy person board with the strings and the text.
Yeah, exactly. a murder board. That's what I'm gonna do.
Board.
I want red strings going across my room with thumbtacks.
Sherry's gonna leave you, and it's gonna be our fault.
And then I'm gonna go. Do you guys know what this means? Like you have to like talk like that when you have a murder board.
It means you're scaring your child, and I need you to stop it.
All right, sorry. You asked how we're doing. I guess I'll go first. So I don't have a lot more to report since I saw each of you over the weekend. I guess since that time, I will say Chris's kid introduced my kid to a game called Goat Simulator, and this house has been nothing but Goat Simulator for like the past 3 days. It's nuts. Like he's just
I'm so sorry.
I know. He's like, well, when John showed him the game, he's like, Dad, this is the game I've always dreamed of. This is the game I've always wanted. And I'm like, all right, we'll get the Goat Simulator, you know. And now he's like licking people and dragging them into traffic, and it's disturbing.
I had heard of the game before, and I saw a trailer for it on the eShop, and I watched it with John, and I thought it looked hilarious, but I was like, I'm not spending money on this. This looks ridiculous. What, you're gonna play this for 5 seconds and get bored? And then he kept asking to see the trailer for like a couple of months, and he never forgot about it. And for Christmas, I was like, you know what? You've earned it. You stuck with it. Goat Simulator is yours. It's on sale for $6. Goat Simulator is yours. So I ponied up the $6 and I bought him Goat Simulator, and he obsessively played it for like 2 weeks solid of just like it was just nonstop goat simulating. And his cousin now wants it. His aunt, my sister-in-law, messaged me earlier today about, you know, how does she find Goat Simulator on the shop so that she can buy it for him. And I'm like, wow, this is spreading like wildfire.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Your kid is definitely spreading the word. Yeah, we didn't really spend real money on it. It was basically a Christmas present. He had a gift card that he got from my brother, but yeah, he spent it on Goat Simulator, and that's all he's been doing for the past for the past week. That's all he's been doing now. And then
it's a weird game, but you know what? If it brings him joy, and that's what I kept saying to John. Like, he was really happy when he's playing it. So you know what? Fine. It's fine. It's no less annoying than listening to him watch dipshits on YouTube. So,
and when you think about $6 versus hours of joy, I mean, dollars per hours of joy. That's a good return on that investment there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You bought him legit toys that, if you do the math, are not going to stack up.
No,
to Goat
totally.
Simulator.
Yeah, he's going to get a lot more mileage out of this Goat Simulator. Yeah, and then I guess the other thing in the past couple days is like there's something going on with my eye. Like it's like I think it's like on the inside of my eyelid. I don't really know. I think it's one of those things called like a sty, where it's like a weird irritation, but then like your eye swells up. So I haven't been wearing my contact lenses because like I keep seeing this thing like underneath my eye where it's like swollen. And I don't want to get to worse. So it's not swollen like, like it's not like cut me, Mick, cut me. But like kind of when I look
I
at
understood that reference.
yeah, see, now you get that. But like when I look at the bottom of my eye, like it kind of looks like remember in Empire Strikes Back before they put the CGI sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word where it's like not the person there, but it's like a projection of them? Hologram? That's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, before they put the hologram of the Emperor there, like when they had the other guy that played it, and he like kind of looked like a weird baboon face guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he had like the big bugged out eyes. And
yeah.
He just sounded like a deep voiced dude.
Like it looked like he had Play-Doh all around his eyes. Like that's what.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what the bottom of my eye looks like. So. I don't know.
All right.
It's better than it was yesterday, but.
Here's your medical advice.
Yeah.
Because, I'll just give medical advice now. What you want to do, rinse it out really good, right? Warm water. Make sure you flush it real good. And then a nice tight packing of oregano right up against your eye. Close your eye, pack it tight with oregano, eye patch, go to sleep. You wake up in the morning, $1,000,000.
This doesn't seem like a real thing.
But you'll smell great and delicious.
You will be hungry for garlic bread in the morning.
I was just going to say.
That's not a real thing. I wouldn't do that.
I'm going to do
but I think
oregano.
You should.
I'm going to do oregano and garlic. And then, like, you know how people put cucumbers on their eyes? I'm going to do pepperoni.
Nice. Nice. I'm excited. You were going to have a lot of clogged pores in that whole area. But by God, everyone's going to want to go to lunch with you.
But then my left eye is going to match my right eye, so it'll be okay.
You speaking of showing up at the bar, I didn't read you. So we all met up at the bar, and his kid brought a game that he made out of like cards that he must have stole out of your garage from like the late 80s, early 90s, and it was just this mix match. You sent the text about it. I didn't see the text till afterwards, so I sat down at the bar, and your kid took out this box of cards that wasn't even a box. It was a Bill and Ted telephone booth from like the cereal box, but it was missing the sticker.
It was a Bill and Ted case from the cereal box, and it was supposed to hold cassette tapes. It was supposed to hold 3 cassette tapes, but now it holds mismatched cards.
And he took this out and started going through, and me and him had a little conversation about it, and I had a great time. I don't want any more prefaces from you about things like that. Just you can preface Kris, give warnings and heads up all you want. I don't want any warnings and heads up. I had way more fun doing that on the fly. I was just like, this is great. I don't know what you got going on here, but I like where your head's at.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was worried about it because he gets something in his head and it's like, nope, that's it. We all have to play this game that doesn't make sense. And like, furthermore, I knew the game would not make sense. Like he gets stuff in his head and then I'm like, well, what are the rules? And then he's like, well, I think. And I'm like, you haven't thought of the rules of this game. There's no rules. So I was like, he's going to expect everybody to play and it's going to be a mess. And then, when we were all standing across the room drinking, he was over there with that other kid with Jason's son. And they're like playing it. Like, and I was like, all right, I don't know what's happening here, but like, I am okay with this. Like, this is great.
It was, I like where his head's at.
That goat game you brought was pretty cool too. Not this totally different kind of goat game, but
it is truly the year of the goat.
Yeah, there
truly
is a lot going on with goats this weekend. How are you, Sean? Tell us about you.
I don't know. Nope. I got nothing. Work
Pass.
sucks. Board games are great. I love the movie we just watched. That was the highlight of my week. Was the bar with you guys, and then this movie. Boring week. I don't know. We're in the middle of the winter. There's not a lot going on. It's not the holidays. It's just you got to get through January and February and get back to good stuff.
Doing shit outdoors.
Yeah. It's not a lot. Just
That's fair.
go to work. Yeah. The boring months. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, I know. I had a couple of things that were giving me a ton of anxiety, and I had a job interview that I'm hoping that I got, and I got I had an interview with a guy for the magazine I write for. I interviewed this guy. It was my first solo interview, and that went entirely too well. Actually, the guy wound up talking to me for 3 hours. I'm like, oh, all right, well, this is supposed to be transcribed and put in a magazine. You just gave me like a book, so that's 3 hours of content. I'm gonna have to like pare down, but so that went really well. I haven't slept in a while, so I'm a little loopy tonight. So I guess apologies if I start making absolutely no sense in this regard. And going to the bar with you guys was fantastic. Getting to see our friend John Wentz for the first time in ages, and then Greg came over and watched The Thing, and that was also pretty fun. So
you had the same highlights I had. Good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, well, let's go down the basics here. The Thing was released on June. Wait. Does Paul need to address Hollywood for anything this week?
You know what? I think I'm going to do it at the end.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
all right.
I'll do it.
I'll
I'll do it after we talk about the movie, but before we pick our next movie.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
All right. In that case, The Thing was released on June 25th.
Whoa. You watched The Thing released in June 25th, 1982. That's not what we discussed. I'm pretty sure Paul told me to watch the 2011 version.
Touche, Sean. Touche.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Chris. Maybe we'll let you talk.
I happen to know that you didn't you watch the prequel, the 2011 one, and the 1950s one?
I did. I watched the one we were supposed to watch, the 1982 one. I put the other two on. I had seen them both before, and I enjoyed them both, and we'll discuss them as we go through a little bit. But I kind of like half watched those two, like I was doing work and stuff.
I got you beat. I went down a further rabbit hole. I did that too, and then I also listened to the audiobook of the novel it was based on. So
whoa,
boom. Yeah,
boom,
wow.
Mic drop.
Because I'm dedicated to the craft. That's why.
All right. The Thing was released on June 25th, 1982. It was distributed by Universal Pictures. It was directed by John Carpenter with screenplay by Bill Lancaster. The film is based on the 1938 novella Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. John Carpenter's other works include Halloween, They Live, Escape from New York, and of course, Big Trouble in Little China.
You're goddamn right.
I had to mention that one. Lancaster's other works include screenplays for the Bad News Bears movies. It's a different movie from both the 1951 movie The Thing from Another World and the 2011 movie The Thing, both of which are unique adaptations of the same source material. The movie stars Kurt Russell, Wilford Brimley, and Keith David, among others, and it tells the story of a group of dudes in the Antarctic who encounter a sort of weird shape-shifting alien who either wants to kill everyone or just wants directions home. Nobody ever actually stopped to ask. I watched this movie in my house with Greg and Karen on a Blu-ray that I borrowed from my dad. I attempted to make an ice cream cookie sandwich to eat with it, but the cookies were way too crunchy, and it devolved into a delicious mess.
Devolved just like The Thing does.
Oh.
Oh.
I watched it on my... I watched it on DVD. I have the DVD to this. I watched it over a week ago. Really, I've been trying... because we usually watch it right before we record. I mean, I've been trying to talk myself out of watching this for a whole month because I've been so excited about this. Like, I could watch this movie every day. Yeah, I did sort of go down some rabbit holes. Like I just told Sean, I listened to the audiobook. I didn't watch the 50s one, but I watched like YouTube clips of it. And then after I watched the thing, I also watched the prequel. And I thought we were recording last week, so I did all this last week. And then what I consumed during the movie, I put some thought into it this time, like Sean does. You know, Sean's always like talking about like I ate jelly beans and ham or whatever, and that's like the movie. I actually tried to put some thought into this. My brother-in-law gave us these hot chocolate balls. Like it's like you.
Oh yeah.
You put the
I've
hot
seen
chocolate ball in the mug, and then you pour like warm milk over it. Because if you pour warm water over it, it's just gross. So you gotta like heat up milk and pour warm milk over it, and then like it kind of melts, and then the hot chocolate and marshmallows that are all inside like permeate through the thing, and you stir it up. I kind of thought
hot chocolate bomb.
Yeah, well, I guess like the thing, like the bomb opening up, I guess that's more like Ridley Scott Alien than John Carpenter's The Thing, but like felt like that was sort of applicable. And then also I just felt like everybody in this movie needed a cup of hot cocoa. So that was another reason I chose it. And I'm going to tell one further part of this story. And my wife is going to be mortified that I told this on the podcast. She was remarking about how long it had been since she's seen this movie. Then she kind of like looked down and stirred her hot cocoa. While she was doing that, I took the time to implement my joke. So I implemented my joke so it was ready when she looked back up. So it went like this. She said, "Wow, it's been a long time since I seen The Thing." She looks down. She stirs her cocoa.
Oh, no.
I put my joke into play. She looks back up, and without missing a beat, she goes, "You should put your pants back on." So that was how I watched this movie.
Well played, sir. Well played.
Did you put your pants back on?
Of course not. It's his home.
Yeah. We're all recording without pants now. Honestly, when Greg texted that in the chat, that was like, you should all record without pants for the Patreon, I was like, that's perfect for The Thing. We can all be The Thing.
Oh, speaking of Greg ate, and this I thought was very strange. I didn't mention it at the time, but he had a box of those little Valentine's candy hearts. That was his snack. The little ones that like little chalk things.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's not Valentine's Day yet.
It's not Valentine's Day yet, and I didn't know people voluntarily ate those.
Well, also,
especially not out of season. It really took me aback, and
yeah.
I didn't say anything.
Did he have them left over from last Valentine's Day?
That's a good question.
That's the only option.
I don't know.
Is the Valentine's
I'm sure
Day
they're
stuff
for sale
out?
now. That stuff got put out in grocery stores the day after Christmas.
Oh yeah. All right. I you know what? I'm pretty sure they don't make them since that's the joke, right? They haven't made them since the 60s. It's the same ones. They just keep they don't, it's chalk and sugar. So whether he bought them this year or last year, the ones he's eating were probably made in the 80s, so it doesn't
And
who cares if he held on to them for a year.
Be mine. Stay cool. I don't know what this kind of stuff they say.
I bet if you could get a box from when we were kids, there's some inappropriate stuff on those hearts that's no longer on those hearts.
Suck it. Go to town.
Eat my shorts.
I don't know.
Ay caramba.
Yeah. I watched it on our the TV we won in the video arcade, and I ate. We watched it in the morning, which is not a normal time to watch this movie, but it's how this went down. Woke up, it was like a Sunday morning. I was like, I'm watching The Thing. Jack was like, okay. And I was like, what could we eat that's The Thing? And we're looking around, and she was like, there's those weird egg things in the fridge that you keep saying, I don't want to eat that thing. And I was like, you're right, I'll eat that thing. She gets those like Hello Fresh boxes, and every now and then they throw some random thing in there that they want you to start buying. And it came with like these, I don't know, these little pods. And you put the pod in the microwave, and you open it up, and it's like an egg and spinach and feta cheese, like it holds its own shape. Does that make any
Sounds
sense?
terrifying.
Like it's in a plastic thing that you kind of like peel open and it plops out on your plate and it holds that pod shape once it's cooked. It was all right.
Okay.
It was definitely best described as an egg thing because that's where it was. And whiskey because it was the weekend, so fuck it, eggs and whiskey for breakfast while I watched the thing.
Real whiskey. That's R.J. McCready style.
Yeah. Not what does he drink? Does he drink Jim Beam? What's he got in there? I don't remember now. He drinks some shitty whiskey. I had nice whiskey. I'm fancy like that.
Well, I think a lot of times when we unpack these movies and we start, like, first of all, we're always all over the map. Like, we talk about the end of the movie, and then we talk about the middle, and then the beginning, and then the middle again. And like, I think, I think part of me wants to unpack this linearly a little bit because there's just so much in this movie. I don't want to miss anything. But then also,
I agree. I would like to kind of go. I had some real thoughts at the beginning of this movie. This was quite a journey.
That's what I was going to ask you, Chris. The other thing we usually do when we start is, in this case, like, this is a thing that Sean and I have seen many, many times, and you were new to this movie. And I'm also kind of glad that you only watched it yesterday because you haven't had a chance to, like, go down a rabbit hole and, like, learn some of the other behind the scenes things about this movie. So instead of asking you what you thought about the movie, I'm kind of interested in asking you what your first impressions were of the movie. Like, what was your impression of the beginning of the movie? Because I can't unsee this movie. I can't go back to before I saw it, but I can only imagine being, like, knowing a little bit about the movie, and then it's about a monster, and it's a horror movie and whatever, and then starting that movie with the men in the helicopter shooting at the dog. And yeah, I'll shut up and let you talk.
Well, I thought the beginning of the movie was kind of funny, right? I'm poking fun, like, wow, these guys suck at hunting this dog. Like, this really seems like a one-sided hunting trip right here. Like, these assholes are chasing this poor dog around, trying to shoot him in a helicopter. And, like, it kept escalating. I'm like, Jesus, like, in order to have a helicopter and chasing after this dog to try to hunt it, these rich assholes, they must have done this before, right? How are they this bad at shooting this dog? And then, like, they shot the dude while they were trying to shoot the dog, and it was like, what an asshole, go get him. And then, like, geez, it must have been like 20 minutes or so into the movie before I was like, I think the dog's important. Like, I didn't even occur to me that it wasn't some sort of weird gag. And it was like, something's up with that dog. Oh shit, that dog's like, is that dog the thing? I don't know what the thing is. Whoa. I wrote a bunch of notes for the beginning. Boy, they really hated that dog. They had an Asteroids Deluxe machine. That was freaking cool. That was the arcade cabinet they had in there. There was Asteroids Deluxe. I thought that was really neat. And then I wrote, should I not trust that dog? Okay, I definitely don't trust the dog, and I can't shake the feeling this whole movie could have been prevented if that Norwegian dude was a better shot.
Or if any of them understood Norwegian, because apparently what he says in Norwegian is something along the lines of, that's not a dog, that's some kind of thing, get away from it, don't touch it, before he dies. So if any of those people understood Norwegian, like, the movie averted, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who dives after a live grenade? What kind of move was that? That's a runaway situation.
He goes to throw the grenade, and it, like, flops out of his hand, and the other guy goes digging for it. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Like, look, your hands are cold. You're in the Arctic. You got thick mittens on. Look, you dropped it. Fine. I'm not even going to hold that against him. You drop a live grenade, there's one direction to go. It's any direction. Any direction is the right direction except towards the grenade.
Another, this one's more of an overall thing about this movie, was that Karen pointed out, and I have to agree with her, I feel like a lot of things would have went differently if there was at least one woman out there with them. Because there were a lot of doodly decisions being made throughout the course of this movie. And, I mean, it was a dangerous situation, don't get me wrong, but this was a bunch of dudes doing dude stuff. Like, there was definitely a lot of dudeness happening, and I feel like there were options to do things differently at some point. I don't know what they would have been. I'm just saying that was the situation. But yes, that was the beginning of the movie for me, was like, the first thing that struck me was the production value of, like, this doesn't look like a movie that's as old as I am, just about. Like, just the film quality of everything. It didn't look like it was shot like, it didn't look like it was shot a long time ago. It looked really clean. It might have just been the Blu-ray transfer that I had, but just the way it was put together felt very modern, which I was really impressed by. And the fact that they totally threw me for a loop with that dog, like, just completely got me with that dog. Now, I do also want to say that I was very impressed by the movie, and I appreciated it, but I did not enjoy it.
Oh, wow.
This is very much not my kind. Like, I don't like horror movies, and this is very much the kind of horror movie that I don't like. I appreciated it very much. I was very impressed by it. This is a very good movie, but I found it to be very unpleasant. Like, as soon as it was done, I turned to Greg and said, "Well, I didn't like that at all."
This is going to be tough for me because this movie means a lot to me. I sort of went through two levels of fanaticism about this movie. And I'd say the first level of fanaticism came when I was in high school. I watched this movie a bunch of times. I watched it with Jed. This was kind of one of our go-to movies. I probably watched it with you too, Sean. I don't know.
Most likely.
Yeah, most likely. I don't know where the hell Kris was when we were watching all these movies, but
not watching horror movies.
Yeah,
he was learning to play instruments. You and me just didn't utilize our time in such a wasteful fashion.
Right.
That or Super Mario Brothers.
But
the other.
Yeah, this was Jed and I loved this movie. He and I went through like a little bit of a John Carpenter phase. We watched this. We watched Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York. Other ones that didn't have Kurt Russell in it. I think we liked They Live.
Oh God, They Live? Are you
Keith
kidding
David,
me?
But it doesn't have Kurt Russell.
But it's got Rowdy Piper.
Rowdy Piper, yeah.
I mean, if you can't have Kurt Russell, get Rowdy Piper.
Right. Yeah, like this movie always sort of felt like the best of the sort of Kurt Russell offerings. The this weird synergy between John Carpenter and Kurt Russell. God love Kurt Russell. Like, he always knows what kind of movie they're making. He never has to be like, what is this one, John? I always felt like the character in Big Trouble in Little China, like Jack Burton, was like, a little more of a comedian, like he was cool, like he was a badass, but like it was more funny stuff than anything else. And then Snake Plissken in Escape from New York. Yeah, like that almost feels like a parody of an action star. And like McCready in The Thing, like, just always sort of hit that sweet spot for me, where he was like, he is such a badass, but like he also sort of has some of those zingers and those funny lines, like he, that the thing where he talked about the Norwegian and he keeps calling them those crazy Swedes. Like there's funny stuff that he does because it's just like, he's McCready and he doesn't care. Like he's too cool to get this right,
He super underplays it in this, whereas those other two characters you pointed out, those are, I mean, look, Big Trouble in Little China is Kurt Russell, right? I mean, that movie is just, it's it's him. That movie is not a thing without him. And then Snake Plissken is way over the top in the direction that Snake Plissken is. McCready, I think you're right. I think he nails that sweet spot by underplaying it. He's not overly comedic. He's got a couple mildly funny lines about, all those crazy Swedes or whatever. And then he's a badass, but he's not such a badass that it's a cliche, and he's not such a badass that he's owning it at any point, other than wearing that ridiculous hat that only a badass could pull off.
Right.
He's the character is extraordinarily well undersold. Like, he undersells it perfectly in this, and I think you're right. Whatever the charisma, not charisma, the relationship between Carpenter and Kurt Russell, it feels like, and I mean, who knows? Maybe it was very hands-on, but it just feels like Kurt Russell was able to give Carpenter exactly what he needed for these different movies. And I guess that's what being an actor is, but I mean, he gave him very different characters that are all kind of the same. Like, they're all tough guys. They're all the badass tough guy in the movie, but they're very different. Yeah. And he sells them in a very different way in each movie.
I agreed. The nuance that he brings to it, it really is what makes these movies. And just like all of these characters in this movie, I just felt like everybody was so real. Like, I think I fell in love with the story and the characters when I was in high school. And then when I was in college, that was kind of my second level of fanaticism, where I kind of like fell in with some film nerds. And there was a lot of picking apart this movie as far as the special effects and the creature effects and what the effects team was able to do without CGI, without computers. So
they were gross.
Yeah, I know a lot more about this than probably anybody wants to hear. Hopefully, I don't nerd out too much on the podcast, but I've watched a lot of like behind the scenes things and stuff like that, and then some of what I know, and like I'm by no means the expert, but like some of what I know I've put together from watching it a bunch of times. And so like I say to myself, like, all right, well, they must have had at least 3 different animatronic heads, and this one worked this way. So like I guess I've always been thinking like what I know about the effects, and then thinking about it and being like, ooh, how did they do this, or how did this part get done? So yeah.
In regard to that, so a couple things. Number one, we're in the sweet spot right here. I mean, this is 82, which is a little on the early cusp of the bubble. But by 94, Jurassic Park, 93, and then like Terminator 2 was like 92, I think. Mm-hmm. By the time you hit like the early 90s and then forget about it by the late 90s, CGI is controlling the special effects universe. I mean, there's still some practical effects at that point, but Terminator 2, Jurassic Park, that's it. CGI has won the war.
Star Wars Episode 1 really pushed that over the edge.
In 99?
In 99, Jar Jar Binks, and that was kind of the end of it. Then everybody was like, nah, fuck practical effects. We're just doing this now.
It's over, right. Yeah. So, I mean, the late 80s is about the height of practical effects, right? They've stood on the shoulders of the giants before the new era begins, right? That's as far as it got. They were a little ahead of their time in 82 here. I think they were, this is the beginning of the crest, the beginning of the ultimate practical effects, right? And then 2 other things in rewatching the old one, so let me sum up the old one I'll do the old one, you do the new one, Paul.
Sure.
Just for Kris and the listeners, and we'll do it in I'm going to give myself 60 seconds. The original 1951 thing, people in the Arctic, they find a UFO, they dig out a body, the body melts, gets free, turns out the body is an alien, it comes back to life. It's not a shapeshifter, but it is made of vegetable material, so it grows like a vegetable, cellularly speaking. And there's this big, scary, the Thing, walking around, and they beat him up, and eventually they electrify him, and they kill him. And of course, as a scientist, is like, we shouldn't kill him, let's help him. And then, the Thing just beats everybody up and kills them. All right, so that's that movie, right? Now, I say that in very quick, brief synopsis to say a couple important things about it. One, I in watching stuff on YouTube, I found that apparently that was the first movie where they did a full body burn, right? Which is a practical effect of sorts. It's a special effect. You got a guy fully on fire. Which I realized then that they did that in this one too, so it's a nice way to pay homage to it, right? They really reached back and touched the root of the old one. I said last time that I thought maybe they connected together. They don't, but there's that one scene in the new one that kind of sings back to it when they're watching the Norwegians footage. It almost looks shot for shot like the footage from the old one where they find the thing in the ice.
And I think that was John Carpenter. I think that was homage.
Tipping
I think
his
that
hat,
was John
right.
Carpenter. Yeah,
I think the body fire was too. Not that it didn't work in well, but I mean they did the guy completely lit on fire and then he runs out into the snow, which is what they did in the 1951. Almost shot for shot on that part too. I think Carpenter was tipping his hat a bunch to the old one. And in rewatching the old one, the thing the old one got right. Was it was great, and you mentioned about this one, and this one got it right too. It was the characters. The characters were believable. It was they just there was like a charisma between them. Like you bought it. You bought into instantly. You bought into this group of guys and who they were. They didn't all get fleshed out before they were killed, right? You didn't get 100% fleshed out on each character before they started getting wiped out, but you got enough of each one that it felt cohesive. You felt the camaraderie. You felt the relationships between them. And the old one did a good job of that too. There was a little less killing in the old one. I think most of the people survived. There's only a couple people who didn't. But it was, especially in the 50s one, I mean, science fiction wasn't known for doing a great job with character development and stuff. And they all did a really good job of just being the characters that they were. And this 1982 one did the same thing. Like each one of the characters did a great job of being who they were. And I think that goes real far into drawing you in when you're about to get hit with some out of this world stuff. I think the best example is probably Abyss. That movie, if it didn't have, I don't know if you guys have seen The Abyss.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's a sci-fi movie. It's so character driven. Like, I think if it didn't have such a great cast that did such a good job selling you on who they were in the beginning, that movie would have fallen really flat. And instead, you got. I mean, I love that movie. I think it's phenomenally well done. And just to let Kris know, the old one did have a girl, and she did add a lot. She was good. You're right.
Listen, real quick. I know you want me to talk about the new one, but I have so much to say about what you just said, and I also, at some point, we need to circle back and talk about the characters because I have like a whole thing I need to say about the characters. But Sean, your unpacking of this 50s one, so. John Carpenter grew up on the 50s one, on the 1951 movie. Like he watched that as a kid, and then in the 80s, this was a thing that he wanted to, do his own version of. So, and this sort of ties back to what we were talking about with the beginning of the movie and the dog. So, in the book, which I didn't know any of this. Like, I know a lot about this 1982 movie. Before we started doing this podcast, I didn't know a lot about the history of the story. And I found a lot of really interesting things in my deep dive. So the John Carpenter's one is really close to the book more than any of the other ones. The book, all these characters, MacReady, Blair, Dr. Copper, Gary, like a lot of John Carpenter's characters are in the book. And, in the book, they find the spaceship, they dig up the creature escapes from the block of ice. then it starts infecting people or whatever. Similarly to this movie, Blair gets very paranoid. He tries to sabotage things. He doesn't want the infection to spread. And at one point, they decide they're going to do a serum test, that they're going to mix infected blood with blood that's not infected and see the chemical change or whatever. And like, basically, without going too much into it, it's kind of useless in the book because one of the people that they start with happens to be infected and none of them knew that. So like the serum test is kind of pointless. And then they do the blood test. But I think in the book they do it with electricity instead of fire, which is kind of something that happens in the 50s movie, that they like electrocute that monster at the end.
Right.
But like the book is, it's this like paranoia. Who is it? Who isn't it? And the 1950s movie didn't know how to do that. They didn't know how to make this threat that was this existential thing that could have been anybody, which was why they kind of made it into this like Frankenstein monster or, vegetable Frankenstein thing. But by the time the 80s rolled around, like John Carpenter felt like he could do this, and he wanted to do, the book that he loved. You were saying that the spaceship, the Norwegian footage is basically almost the same thing as the 50s movie, that they circle up around that spaceship, they find the spaceship, they're like, it's this big, blah, 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 oh, here's the hole in the ice. But with this movie, with the 82 movie, the choice to have that done by that Norwegian team and to start the movie with the helicopter and the dog, I think is so smart, because the action is already happening by the time you figure out that the thing is among them. Like, like the differences that this movie made, I think, is what makes it so compelling. That you still get the spaceship, you still get the creature burst out of the ice because they go to the Norwegian camp. But the fact that this story is already in motion when they figure it out is, I think, one of the best parts of it.
I loved the fact that it was too late by the time I realized what was happening, which is not something that always happens in the movies, especially looking back at something at this vintage of just like the movie will show you the monsters here, and then you're watching everybody else react to it. I didn't realize the monster was among them until it was too late, and the same thing happened to them. And I thought that was a very impressive feat that they pulled off. You're right. Like, I looked at that whole opening scene as I was so completely wrong about it, because it didn't look like it looked like, here's this innocent dog. Clearly these are assholes hunting a dog. But it wasn't that at all. And by the time I realized that, it was too late. And I thought that was I thought that was quite brilliant. And when I tell you that I did not enjoy this movie, I'm saying it's that I didn't enjoy the content of the movie. I don't like gross stuff. I don't like everything is negative. Like, this was just dire. I don't like that personally, but I appreciated how good the movie was. It was a very good movie. And it impressed me on a lot of tiers. Like, I just wanted to make sure that I laid that out, that I appreciate this movie. I just did not enjoy it because it goes against everything that's in my brain. I like there to be some levity, and there was just like, wow, this is dire all around. There's no, this is dark.
I guess I can understand that to a certain degree. Like, to a certain extent, I don't like horror movies either. Like, certainly a lot of the newer horror movies where it's just like, and now we're gonna edit in a weird jump scare, newer horror movies, it's not even like jump scares. It's like weird, creepy junk in the back. Like that seems to be like the new trend. And like I don't love that. But I don't know. I mean, I think I have a certain place in my heart for slasher movies just because they're so goofball. But like this movie doesn't feel like any of that to me. It feels like a
No.
psychological thriller and a marvel of cinematic mastery.
Yeah, it is very impressive, and I very much appreciated the lack of jump scares because that's something. Jump scares, I hate them. It's my most hated of all things in movies. I would rather watch Sing 2 than a movie with jump scares. I mean, I think I went to the see Signs with you and Gina and Paul, and I walked out of that movie because it was like, this is just cheap jump scares, and I freaking hate it. I'm out. I don't want to see this. With nothing to do with it. Obviously, some movies that I love have them in it, and this was one of those situations where like they didn't cheap out on jump scares. Everything in this movie was earned, and I really appreciated that.
I don't. So I kind of agree with everything you're both saying, but I kind of disagree with it. Modern horror movies. The thing I feel like they rely on too much is like is gore porn. Like if it's like just showing me a bunch of like gore, that doesn't. I don't mind gore, but that's not useful. Like I feel like they rely on that, and they do overly rely on the jump scare, and they do overly rely on a bunch of other stuff nowadays because I feel like they see something work once and then they run off the edge of the earth with it. I don't mind jump scares when they're done well. If you're implementing it appropriately, good job. As far as this movie's, you said everything's dire and negative, and like at the end of this movie, so everything's dire and negative, and I feel like the end is such a triumph of human spirit. Like, I love, and I get how you could see it either way. You could be like, this is a real negative ending. I'm like, it's not a negative ending. This guy, Kurt Russell, McCready, whatever, he redefined the victory conditions. He didn't ask the other side. He was like, I make my own damn game. I'm not, you came here to play chess and I'm going to play baseball. Go fuck yourself. And my game, you assumed my game was I want to live. My game is I want you to die.
Yeah.
And he did that. So he won. He sat down. He was like, I won, motherfucker. And then he's looking at the other guy. And he's like, you might be the alien. You might not. Doesn't much matter now because you're dead. And my game wasn't to win. My game was to make sure you didn't leave here. And guess what? You ain't leaving here.
Well, I have a lot to say about the end of the movie, but I'll save that for the end. You mentioned a couple things. You mentioned gore porn, and you mentioned McCready making his own rules. I think this kind of ties into sort of the next thing I want to say, which is when this movie came out in 1982, it was not well received. This movie came out 2 weeks before E.T. came out. People decided they did not want to see a gross, disgusting, creepy alien, that they wanted like a happy fun time alien. And
E.T.'s pretty fucking gross and disgusting. I'm not just throwing that out there.
Yeah, but he's endearing. And he's
endearing. You know what? The Thing could have been too. We don't know. Nobody stopped to ask. We don't know what that thing wanted.
I think its intentions were very clear when you look at the movie. Yeah, people thought this was gore porn. People thought that he sacrificed the story and the characters for the shock value and the grossness of the special effects. And I could not agree with that less. I think that the characters are incredibly well constructed in this movie. And I think that also one of the coolest things is that he says so much about them without letting you know too much, where you would know who's acting out of character and who might be the monster. Sean always brings up his Jurassic Park thesis, right? About in 1993, like that's right about when special effects stopped being a problem, right? I think a lot of times I bring up my Back to the Future thesis, that I think that like Back to the Future is the best written movie ever, and it's because I think I think there's so much that they show you, like that you see and you hear, that drives the movie forward plot wise. You know, not everything has to be dialogue in a scene. Like there is so much expositional information fed to you in such a effective way that it just keeps the story going until you get, you know, the next thing you need, right? Like think about the opening of Back to the Future, right? How like they could have just done credits over you know, McFly skating behind the truck, right? But like instead, like he walks in and you see all Doc's weird inventions, and you see the newspaper articles, and then the TV says the thing about the stolen plutonium, and then you see the plutonium under the bed. Like there's so much, you know, just by the first couple, you know, minutes. And I think that like everything that he gives you with these characters says so much about them. Like MacReady, if this isn't an analogy for the movie, the first time you see MacReady, he's playing that chess game, and then he claims that the chess game cheats, and he just dumps his whiskey in it. You know what I mean?
Cracked me up. Like, how expensive was that machine, and what else did it do besides play chess? And he just fucking roasts it right there.
Right, but like that's exactly what Sean just said, right? Like you thought we were playing chess and I was playing baseball, right? Like you know, like the thing thought that it was playing by a certain set of rules, and MacReady's like, I don't care about your rules. I'm gonna dump my drink in the motherboard. You know what I mean? Gary, the first time you see Gary, he like knocks that window out to shoot at the Norwegian guy. So, like, you already know he's incredible shot because he could shoot a Norwegian in the eye from 60 yards away or whatever, you know. But, like, you also kind of see that, like, he's in charge. He's kind of a dick. Like, he's
trigger happy.
Yeah.
That was the thing that jumped out at me. Like, this guy is waiting for an excuse to use his gun.
One of the other guys, it's a throwaway line, but one of the other guys, like, as there's a bunch of stuff going on, he's like, oh, Captain finally got to use his gun or whatever, or Colonel or whatever he called him, right?
Right, yeah.
And, like, these guys aren't in the military. So that told you so much. It told you about the guy with the gun, but it also told you a lot about the guy saying the line, because he's being sarcastic and, there's important stuff going on, and he's still taking pot shots at this guy who's a little uptight, a little bit rigid, a little bit quick to fire a gun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't agree more. And you know what? The 1950s one is a good parallel to that. But I mean, in the 1950s, everything was exposition. There was so much exposition in old sci-fi movies. So I'm not blaming that one specifically, but when you look at both of them, you're like, yeah, they got so much character work and world building done with so little with so little dialogue and so little waste.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on. Knowles, the cook, with the boombox playing Stevie Wonder, and he's on the roller skates, and the guy tells him to turn it down, and he turns it up. Clark, I think, is the most clear. Like that dude just loves his dogs. Like when he walked in there and saw that Blair had taken out the dogs, like, you know, the look on his face says it all. And so yeah, I think they're all. I think he gives you so much to identify with these characters and let you know who everyone is and how this base works together and what kind of personalities you're up against. But I don't think he gives you so much that you don't know who's acting different. And my example is Patient Zero is either who is it? It's either
not Windows. It's the guy with the denim jacket who was on the couch and he turns after they touch his blood with the thing. Or it could also be
Norris, the guy whose chest opens up.
Right.
Palmer is the other guy. It's either Palmer or Norris who is patient zero. I happen to think it's Norris. I have my own reasons for thinking that. But like at one point, when he clearly is one of them, they offer Norris the gun. They're like, who should be in charge? Like, and they all vote for Norris. Norris should be in charge. And like he goes, no, guys, I'm not comfortable, And like at that point, we don't know if that's in character or out of character for Norris, but we do know that it's in character for the Thing. That the Thing doesn't want to fight. It wants to slowly spread and infect everyone. Like, it will do whatever it can to hide itself and preserve itself and not get everyone's attention towards it, But then when it gets people alone is when it spreads. So, like, I don't know. Like, that's just, I think it's fascinating, the thought that he put into how much he gives so that you don't know who's who.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep moving. What's the next part of the movie?
Well, I guess if I'm crossing off my list of things from the beginning of the movie, I'll just say, I was surprised to see that spaceship at the beginning of the movie. Like, that's a thing I didn't really remember. That you see the spaceship. Like, I don't think you need it. Like, I think it's kind of stronger when it starts and it's just the helicopter and the dog. But the kind of the thing where the background sort of burns away and you see that iconic lettering that says the Thing. That's something that they also did in the 50s one. So I think John Carpenter was trying to pay homage to it. But that is done with a fish tank full of smoke. And they wrote the Thing on the back of the fish tank. There's like cut out lettering that says the Thing. And they pointed a light at it. And then they put a plastic trash bag over the back of it. So they burned away the trash bag with a match, and then the lettering kind of burned away, and you saw that like smoky lettering that said the Thing. So it's just another one of those things where we attribute so much to computers, and like this was the shit they were doing. Like, they were like, get a trash bag and a match, or they were like, how do we do this monster? Like, let's get some latex and some wax and some KY jelly and some mayonnaise and some fire, and we're gonna burn it all up. You know what I mean? Like, it blows me away.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do love the lettering in the beginning. I agree with you. I don't think you needed the UFO in the beginning. I'm not exactly sure why they did that. Again, maybe just to pay homage to the original, but yeah, I would have just let that go.
What's some stuff from your list, Chris? Because I'm gonna go on and on, man.
Well, I mean, the next thing that I wrote down, because like I was riveted by the movie. Like, I stopped taking notes for the most part, except for when something truly absurd happened, and that didn't happen very often because, like you were saying, the characters were all very believable. There were no caricatures. We all, me and Karen and Greg all commented when the guy told him to turn off that music. Like, who the fuck tells you to turn off Stevie Wonder? Like, how dare you? But the next thing that really jumped out at me was when Wilford Brimley's doing the autopsy. He's just in there with a pair of rubber gloves and nothing else. There's no protection going on, no glasses, not so much as an apron. This is a weird alien mutant. He's just like, fuck it. These gloves are good enough. Let's see what's in here. Let's go digging. I thought that was hilarious, that on a lot of levels, there was a complete lack of any safety standards for like anything on this base. And I don't know if that was... struck me as like kind of doodly, or if that's just kind of the way it was because of budgetary constraints. But like the autopsy in particular, like, this is why is he even letting other people in the room? They're not even wearing a mask. Like, holy shit, you're dissecting an alien, and Wilford Brimley's just like, caution to the wind. I'll get this shit all over my clothes. I don't care. I don't know what it is, but fuck it. I got rubber gloves, so my fingernails are covered. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, I think part of that, I think we overestimate. We think that I think that we are comfortable in our current standard of how the world works and assume it's been like that for much longer than it actually has. Like, I don't think cleanliness standards and biological contamination, other than at the highest level in like the CIA, who's down in Georgia, the CDC,
The CDC.
the CDC or something like that. I think if you go back to the 50s or 60s or even 70s and walked into a hospital, I think you'd probably be appalled at what was going on. And this is like 82. So
Yeah.
that is a stone's throw from the 70s. And I'm pretty sure if we walked into a hospital in the 70s today, if we traveled back in time, we'd be like, yo, this is fucked up. Like, we just assume we've had a handle on this, but we really haven't. We were doing things definitely into the 30s and 40s and 50s. We were doing things very wrong. In World War II, they were giving guys bottles of crazy glue. That was liquid stitch. You would just pour that in open wounds because it would stop the bleeding. That's not okay at all. Like that was in your pack in World War II 45, right? So I know this is 82, but it's I don't know. I think a lot of that is just the 70s were not as advanced as we like to believe they were.
Also, Wilford Brimley just had to get in there because he was like, there's Quaker oatmeal in this creature. Gotta bust it open and have some.
Everything like about the safety standards were like, I get that. That's 80s. It was like, I cannot imagine being anyone during any time period. Like even when you watch really old sci-fi movies, there's usually like glasses and an apron at minimum when you're about to cut into an alien. They're just like, at the very least, I might want to wear this shirt again. And Wilford Brimley, he didn't even have long sleeves. He's just like, fuck it. I'm going for it. I don't know what this is. And I'm just going to slice them up and find some oatmeal.
Well, Kris, since you only watched it yesterday and didn't have a chance to go down a rabbit hole, what did you think about Wilford Brimley? What did you think about his character, his tactics, and then when and how do you think he became assimilated?
I don't know. I figured that when he was in there busting up the machines and everything, that was him. He wasn't assimilated yet. He was just trying to stop this from spreading. That was his way of kind of just making sure that nothing leaves here.
Agreed.
But
Sure.
but as far as when he actually gets assimilated, I really don't know. I have absolutely no idea.
So there's some controversy about this, and I think it's because his character acts so paranoid for most of the movie, and kind of for the things that you're saying, that he's like doing that autopsy and he's in there touching things, and that at a certain point they go, they say, ooh, like, we don't know how this thing spreads, we should all eat out of cans and we should be careful and not share food or drinks or whatever, right? So the one of the reasons I think that that Norris was patient zero, that Norris was the one that was assimilated by the dog, is
Norris was the one that got bit under the table, right?
Norris was the
He
one
was the one that got shot.
He was the one who had a heart attack, and then when they went to use the defibrillator, his chest opened up and like ate the guy's arms.
Right.
The like curly.
I assumed
guy.
the first guy that was the guy who got bit by the dog under the table, right? Because he had the gunshot wound on his leg, and then you heard like him, "Ow, dog," or something like hit where he was cut open, and I assumed he was the first one.
Is that Bennings?
I don't remember. I don't remember who he was.
So sorry. I'm asking you, but I know a lot of this. The patient zero was either Norris or it was Palmer. Norris is the dude whose chest opened up, the curly haired guy, and
Uh-huh.
Palmer was the like smart asshole guy that was always smoking weed. He was like an engineer or something like that. He wasn't one of the scientists. But I think it was Norris. So again, like there's so much controversy and like nerd talk about this online. Some people think that Palmer couldn't have been the thing because after the dog infects that person, where you see the dog walk into the room and you just see the shadow,
Mhm.
which by the way, that shadow is like a completely different actor than anybody in the cast. Like John Carpenter didn't want you to know who it was, so he didn't want to use any of those people and see their shadows. He
That's
found
awesome.
he found a totally different guy. But anyway, after that patient zero gets infected, there is that one scene where Palmer and Childs are like watching a game show, like watching a game show on VHS and sharing a joint. Like some people are like, "Oh, well, they shared a joint and Childs passed the blood test, so Palmer couldn't have been the thing." I agree with that but not for that reason. I just think like they were roommates. They were hanging out in that room alone after somebody got assimilated. I think if it was Palmer, then Childs would have been next. That's just my theory. But there's people that think that like Wilford Brimley's character became assimilated because he like touched stuff or because he was in there with the pencil and then he put the pencil near his mouth or whatever. Like, oh, did he get infected slowly? I don't think that's what it was. I think it was either Palmer or Norris when people were bringing him food when he was exiled in his shack there, like in the tool shed or whatever it was. Like, I think somebody infected him in a when they were going to visit him. I think somebody assimilated him.
Oh,
Like
I think
the
you're
only
100.
reason I think that is because like there's all this like controversy, like does it spread that way? And like I don't think the movie shows us that it does. Like I think the movie shows us that like the thing needs to be alone with you and it needs time and it's like a gooey gross attack thing. Like there's even some things where like where Bennings runs out in the snow and they go, "Oh, it wasn't finished assimilating him." And like he's got that crazy hand and those dark eyes and he like makes that moan noise. Um
Right.
like I think the way that it spreads is a attack and not like, "Oh, you got a booger in your nose," or you know what I mean? Like I think it spreads a
So
certain
there
way.
was one subtle shot when and I don't remember which time it was. One of the times they go out to see Wilford Brimley, he's got a noose. You
Yeah.
caught that, right?
Yeah,
He's
I
just
noticed
he's made
that.
he's made a noose. So look, I mean, it for all of us who've played Secret Hitler or Resistance or Donner Dinner Party or any of those, who's the secret bad guy board games, there is an art certainly to overselling your lie. But I don't know. I can't see the Thing preparing a noose. To me, that's Wilford Brimley as a human, knowing that shit's getting bad and he might have to take himself out if he thinks that his only option is to become an alien or take himself out. So I think Wilford Brimley, the human, trashed those radios. I think most people are in agreement on that.
Yep.
And then I think Wilford Brimley, the human, made that noose while he was in the shed. And then I think,
And then
look, what?
after that, one of those two guys assimilated him because then the next time you see him, McCready goes out there to check on him and he goes, "Let me come inside. I just want to come inside." Like, which is the opposite of what he's been saying this whole time.
Mhm.
As a paranoid guy, he's been like, "Keep all these people away from me," and then he's like, "I've had enough. I want to come inside." And like, I think between those two scenes is when one of
Agreed.
those two assimilated him.
Agreed.
And then he built that
We solved it, Internet.
spaceship.
It's over.
he built that little spaceship down there, which like when I saw the movie a long time ago, those were some of the things that I thought like didn't hold up. Like I always thought the spaceship looked too, I don't know, like looked too like silly, goofy spaceship, like something that like Marvin the Martian would be like riding around in. But
Right.
like I don't know, this time when I watched it, I didn't feel that way. Like I just kind of was like, I was like, all right, like this creature is stranded here. It's now kind of exhausted its options, right? Like these guys are onto it and it knows it's not getting to civilization some other way. And so it's starting to make its own plans. And like and it, I guess like that's what it could make, right? Like, and I guess like, because it can morph and grow arms and stuff, it could probably like do it pretty quickly. Like if you were a mechanic and you were on an alien planet, like, and there was like machines and stuff that sort of evolved like ours, you probably couldn't build like a car, but like maybe you could build like a pretty cool like go-kart. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I bought it this time when I watched it.
Yeah, I bought that completely. That didn't bug me at all. I was like, oh, he's trying to build a ship to get out of here. And that's when, like, I've made the joke a couple of times, but like, what did the thing want? Like, I know you say that he wants to assimilate, but like, to what end? What's the end goal? Like, was the goal to assimilate because that's how it needs to survive, and then it was going to attempt to communicate in some way, shape, or form? Like, I mean, it seemed like it was, it seemed like it had ill intent, but it also seemed like there was never an opportunity for it to not feel under attack because of just the thing that fascinates me about just the concept of aliens is that everything could be different. Like on the most basic levels could be completely different. So, I mean, what seems horrifying to us could be just like a fucking Tuesday for this alien and being like, why are you setting me on fire? This is how you do this, right? This is how we talk to one another, or something. Like it. The fact that there was never any degree of communication with the alien made it somewhat more scary to me, of like, well, of course we have to burn this thing. Like, this is horrifying what's happening right now. But there was never any discussion of what the thing's ultimate goal was. Like, what was the point of it doing what it was doing besides survival? Like, what happens beyond survival? Clearly, it was sentient enough to have space travel, right? There's spaceships, so it's part of some sort of civilization. But
so
what was
I didn't think it was
purpose?
So I thought McCready, when he did his little blood test and he pointed out, he's like, when I saw the head run around, it occurred to me, I don't think this thing is a cohesive thing. I think it's made up of a bunch of little things that all have this survival instinct, right? And part of this thing's evolved survival instinct or survival skill set, like a chameleon can change its colors to match its surrounding, this thing can like eat other cells and take on their form, right? And part of that, clearly, it can take on your brain, right? And it has your memories, right? Because when it did assimilate people, it was able to speak and act, human enough, right? So it's clearly taking on their memories, at least at some level where it can, function, right?
Or maybe not their memories, but their mannerisms, at least.
Something, right? I mean, it was able to talk and like, it wasn't walking around like when it did assimilate somebody, they weren't walking around like, oh, what's this, thing on the ground here for? Oh, a chair? Do I wear it on my head? Like, no, they understood, I don't know, whatever the person understood to some extent, right?
Right.
So my thought always was that it didn't build that first UFO. My thought always was that it had assimilated some species that had built a UFO. Like,
oh, so this is some sort of alien parasite thing,
right?
That
because
killed whatever was in there to begin
each
with.
little part is just trying to survive. That little blood thing, if it was a cohesive being, when Kurt Russell burned it, it wouldn't have jumped up and did what it did because it gave away the rest of its person. So this is just like a very cooperative collective right? Like the Borg on a cellular level, right? They're all working together, but they are all trying to survive. And it's taking on the knowledge of everybody it eats, and it's taking on the form of everybody it eats. And again, you said ill intent. I don't know. Do we have ill intent when we eat a cow? I don't think we have ill intent. It's, I think it's a survival issue. But if you're dealing with a creature whose only, or at least primary goal is survival, well, then you're kind of automatically pitted against it, right? It's,
And
if,
its primary goal is survival because it wants to do it quickly and effectively without being found out. It doesn't want a conflict. It doesn't want them, I mean, it can, grow tentacles and like open its head and eat people and stuff, but like it doesn't want to do that if it doesn't have to. It wants to spread slowly and effectively. I guess that's like its biological imperative to just keep spreading.
And I guess that's where my question comes in, because like, okay, at what point was this alien shown anything but hostility because of where it landed? I mean, these are all dude bros that were, their first instinct is kill the thing. Like there was never anything but hostility once it was found out.
But
And I'm not
it copied their friends. Like it didn't
exactly.
Go, like,
I'm not saying
hey,
it wasn't justified.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like the thought process could be maybe wherever that thing's from, that's just normal. And again, it's just a weird thought exercise whenever I think of like the concept of alien life. It's like, well, we could be wrong about literally everything. Things that could be terribly horrifying to us as a species could be just the most average thing in the world to them for who knows what reasons, and that's kind of where my mind went with this whole thing, half jokingly, but also kind of like a just an interesting thought exercise. Like, I don't blame anybody for reacting that way. Like, none of of course the characters would react that way because everything seems hostile, but there was never the fact that the alien clearly didn't want to always do these things. Maybe the reason that it only wanted to spread and get the fuck out of there as quickly as possible because it knew it was in danger, because it knew there was no way it was going to be able to communicate with these people. Like, it came and did its thing and then saw how they reacted and was just like, okay, these people are not rational. This is not a society that we can mess with. We need to get out of here.
You're not the scientist from the 1951's movie.
In the book, this was something they also didn't use from the book in any of the other movies or iterations, and I think it's probably good because it's stupid. But there was this thing from the book where like it could only assimilate something that was smaller than it, so because it only had enough cells to like if it tried to assimilate something that was bigger than it didn't have enough cells to copy every of their cell. So like that in the book, that's why it went to a dog first, because it was smaller than the humans. And then, there was some left over where it could go to something else or whatever, which like then you get into like really weird math equations of like how the thing spreads, which would have been weird. But Sean asked me to talk about the 2011 one, the prequel. I did watch that because I saw it when it came out in the movie theater, and mainly I saw it because I love the original, so I was like, of course I'm going to see this prequel. And I remember enjoying it. Like I remember like it wasn't going to win any awards or anything, but I remember feeling like it was like a perfectly enjoyable way to spend an afternoon. When I watched it this time after I had just seen the 82 one, it does not hold a candle to it. Like it's just checking boxes. Like the CGI stuff looks really CGI, and it doesn't look cool. Like it doesn't look like a cool monster. It just looks, I think you see so much that with this they were trying to hide the effects that they were trying so hard to do with bubblegum and mayonnaise and KY jelly and stuff. So like it was in like low light and it was shot a certain way, you know. Now that you can use computers, they just did like they're just like, oh, make tentacles come out and make his chest open and eat that guy, and it kind of was crappy. And then also like it's just checking boxes. Like it's like, oh well, at the Norwegian camp we need to have an axe in the door, and we need
wait.
you know,
You got to synopsize it in 30 seconds for Chris and the listeners.
Okay, that in the prequel, the Norwegians are driving a snowmobile across a glacier. It falls in this pit. They find the spaceship. Because we need an excuse to speak English, they go to America and they get an American doctor played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and she comes out with a helicopter full of other American people that take her to the Norwegian base. So then there's some Norwegians and some Americans there, which is why everybody's speaking English and you can understand the movie. And it's all the things you didn't see. They take the creature out, they thaw it out. It busts out of the ice and up into the roof, and it's actually a movie where there's no mystery of what's happening. Like we all saw the creature break out. They do try to like disguise the actual look of the creature when it's in its creature form. Like you see tentacles, you see some like stalk-like things, but you never really see what it really looks like. And it eats some people, and they're scared of it. And then it starts assimilating people, and they figure it out because it can't assimilate inorganic material. So like they find some like fillings on the bathroom floor, and it's like, well, it copied every part of this person, but it couldn't copy these metal fillings. So that's kind of the test they use in the prequel one. But I think the reason why the prequel one does not jive with John Carpenter's is like sometimes it'll be a situation where where things will be heightened and people will be arguing, and it's like, who's the thing? And instead of the thing trying to hide, it will just attack, which is not what it did in the John Carpenter movie. So maybe it
learned.
What?
Maybe it learned. You know,
maybe
it's an adaptive creature. You know, so
I don't know. I guess I don't know. I guess
it
annoyed me, so I didn't think of it that way.
My thought on it was similar to yours, more so towards your initial watching. So Chris, at the very end, you see the dog escapes the camp, and the two Norwegian guys hop in the helicopter and chase after it. That's how the movie ends, right?
And there's one Norwegian guy that they make the point of saying he doesn't understand English. So the whole time you're going, all right, well, that guy's going to be in the helicopter.
Sure.
Adorable.
Sure. But so when I watched it, it doesn't hold a candle to the first one. I knew that the first time I watched it. But it occurred to me, and especially this time as I was thinking about it, I was like, they made a sequel and fleshed out a little bit, gave some, whatever you want to call it, world building or whatever, to a movie that I love, right? That I've watched every decade of my life at least once, if not 20 times, and have enjoyed on multiple levels at multiple different stages of my life. I watched this movie first when I was a little kid. I was probably like, I watched horror movies and sci-fi movies when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. It was not appropriate. So like, I'm sure I saw this for the first time when I was like 7 or 8 years old. What's that, like 88 or something? It was on VHS, and boom, loved it. So they make this movie, and I think this is the key to any time you're making a prequel, a sequel, a sidequel, whatever it is, right? This movie, the 2011 one, in no way, in my opinion, harmed the 1982 one. I enjoyed every bit as much. They didn't do something stupid where I was like, well, that doesn't work with, this, or you did this, and now this character and the other one sucks, whatever it is, right? You didn't harm your core material in any way, shape, or form, right? you fleshed out a part of the story that probably didn't need to be told, the leading into it, right? And like you said, it was an enjoyable way to spend an afternoon, right? So was it an amazing movie like the 82 one? Absolutely not. Did I enjoy it when I watched it? I did. I sat there, and it was a sci-fi horror movie with some special effects and this and that. And you're right, this effects don't hold a candle to the one that came out 30 years earlier, which that's just messed up. That's the Panama Canal situation we were talking about earlier all over again. Like, how did technology not get us? What? Where's my flying car? So you didn't hurt what I love in any way, shape, or form. You gave me a little more to watch that isn't nearly as good. So you fleshed it out a little bit, and you preserved the good parts. And if you can do that in any of these franchises or in any of these movies, I think it's okay. You gave me something that was moderately enjoyable, but I think the key, where a lot of times they go wrong, is when you start doing things that affect, hurt, or change the way I view the thing I already loved. That's what you got to be careful of. And I thought that the prequel did a great job of it. You're right. It sat there, it checked some boxes, right? But I think checking those boxes is important. It put the axe in the door. It got the guy who didn't speak English onto the helicopter. Is it gimmicky? Is it obvious? Did you see it coming? Sure. But they did it, and now it didn't hurt me when I rewatched the 82 one. And, you gave me a little bit more of the story that I didn't have before. Thanks.
Well,
that is the most important thing to do in a prequel. And I promise I won't go on a long segue, but it's one of the things I hate so much about the Star Wars prequels. If you're going to make a prequel to something established, especially something as well loved as this original movie, your first and foremost thing is to do no harm to the original content. You can't make the original stuff worse by doing whatever the fuck you want. Like, if you're going to tell a prequel, you have to be careful to do it right and to not make your existing material worse. And that was, I understand the prequels have their fans, the Star Wars prequels, but that's what has always bothered me about them, is all the bullshit that they did that was unnecessary. And what you're saying about this prequel not doing anything like that and ticking those boxes, and not in a way that was like, well, shit, we've had 3 movies and we've got a lot of ground to cover. So we're on the white ship. We got to get Luke and Leia in the 2 different places. Like, go. Come on. We got 5 minutes left. Get it all done. Yeah. The fact that this was done intelligently, that I find very impressive.
Yeah, you're right. The Star Wars prequel stuff is a little bit of a rabbit hole. I'll just say that I always felt like the movie in my mind, watching the originals, thinking about what happened before it, was better than the prequels. Like, I always assumed, because they say it, that all right, Obi-Wan trained Luke and Yoda was Obi-Wan's master, and then you see the prequel and you're like, who the fuck is Qui-Gon Jinn? Who's this guy? And then when you find out that Yoda just ran the Jedi daycare, you're like, well, that's not as cool as I thought it would be. But
Vader built 3PO. That was so. It breaks so much. Why would you do that?
No. Speaking of giving you a little bit more, all right. So there's a prequel, but did you guys know that there is? I won't say a sequel, but let's call it like a John Carpenter blessed continuation in the form of a video game.
I did know that. That was a big deal when that came out.
I knew there was a video game. I did not know it was a continuation of the story. I figured it was just remember Cliffhanger, the video game? I mean, other than
so
tacking
funny,
on,
because I just watched Cliffhanger last night and it was awful. Anyway, go on.
Other than tacking on a fist fight with a helicopter, you're basically just running back through the movie, right? I mean, I know
right.
that's even bold to say about that game, but like, you're not continuing the story. You're letting someone play the story, right? So I assumed that's what the Thing game was.
It's weird that I'm the guy that knows the thing about the video game in this case. But yeah, the Thing video game was for the PS2.
Came out on PS2, Xbox, and PC.
Sure, what Kris said. And well, I played it on PS2. But yeah,
Most people did.
It picks up where this story left off. A team of Americans comes to, Antarctica, comes to these research bases to like figure out what happened, to investigate it. And I think there's 2 helicopters worth. There's like an Alpha and a Bravo team, and one goes to the Norwegian site and one goes to the American site. And like, you kind of have to like there's a lot of things that are in a video game, almost like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, where like the monster, the thing jumps out at you and you got to kill it, or it's behind the desk, or it's behind the door, or whatever. But I think there was also some like quote unquote puzzles, like get the key out of the drawer so you can open the medical room and get the blah blah blah. But there's things that you see from the movie, like you see Keith David's frostbitten body in the snow that he is that he froze to death of hypothermia. You find McCready's recording where he's recording on that tape player and making his chronicles. There's some other stuff, and then I don't know if it does. The ending of the video game doesn't really answer for you who was the thing. Like when you get out of there and you escape, you're picked up in a helicopter and you're picked up by McCready, and it's like, oh, did McCready survive or was McCready the thing? But like it's I guess he wanted to make the end of the video game as ambiguous as he made the end of the movie.
Now I got to go play this video game.
Yeah, that seems to be the general consensus. I mean, I didn't know anything about the plot, but I remember I was working in video game stores when this came out, and I remember this being a really big deal, that it was endorsed by John Carpenter, and
I think his voice is on it. I think he did a voice on it too. John Carpenter.
He has a cameo appearance in the game, according to Wikipedia. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was there was actually going to be a follow-up to it too, but the company that made it, Computer Artworks, went into receivership in 2003, and I don't think it recovered. But it was Konami handled the console versions of it. I'm trying to find the information on the writers, but I'm not seeing it on this site. But I remember this being a very big deal when it came out. I had a lot of customers that were like, is it good? Like, they were terrified that this was going to be bad, but they were also really excited because it looked very good.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I guess I've loved every part of this at every stage of its life, because I played the video game, I watched the prequel, I did all the things.
You did all the things.
I don't know how much we have left. I have 3 TV shows I have to mention.
Oh,
Can anybody guess any of them?
I got like 2 or 3 more things on my list. What TV shows you got to mention that have to do with the thing?
2 of them.
Oh, I don't know. What are you going to say?
Well, first of all, watching it this time, and this just makes sense because what a great show. Stranger Things definitely got the design for their like flower open head creature from this movie.
Oh my god, yeah, the Demogorgon. I was like, I spotted that. I was like, oh shit, that's a Demogorgon.
But then I thought about it for like 2 seconds more. I was like, oh yeah, Stranger Things is just like, look, I love the show, really love the show, but there's been few things in my lifetime that have pandered to like 1980s, what do you call it, nostalgia, right? Has anything ever pandered to nostalgia more than that show? And don't get me wrong,
not as successfully. There's been a lot of things that pander to that constantly, but they don't do it as successfully as Stranger Things.
And Stranger Things,
well, I love it.
I mean, the Ghostbuster references, they certainly the writers, as well as the set designers, costume designers, everybody involved in that is clearly spending their off time just watching 80s horror and sci-fi, right? So clearly they watched The Thing, and that thing was the Demogorgon at the one point. I was like, oh, yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I appreciate that they grabbed it, right? So there's that one. Mm-hmm. The next one, I can't believe we haven't mentioned this yet, and Kris, I assume you made this connection. There's the episode of X-Files that was blatantly just a ripoff of this.
Oh, yeah. I think that one was called Ice, right?
Yeah.
Where they find like an organism in the ice.
And X-Files did this a couple times where they just ripped off like a horror movie or a sci-fi movie or whatever, and then just did it themselves. But they're God, and I love X-Files, so I don't say this in a bad way either. They ripped things off so well. That episode of Ice captured so much of what was great about this John Carpenter movie, minus the ridiculous special effects. That I could watch that episode. That's probably top 3 or 4 episodes of X-Files for me. Like that and Swarm and one or two others. That's as good as X-Files got. It might have been early season 2 or something. But I mean, it's a bunch of people up in the ice and somebody's infected and we don't know who, and maybe it's more than one person and I think it's them and we'll lock them up over there and here's a test, and like it's just like, oh, you're remaking the thing. Good job. And they really did do a great job with it. If you don't remember that one, God, go rewatch Ice. That's such a great episode.
I would actually like to, because I don't. I've forgotten so much of X-Files. I vaguely remember it. Like I know what you're talking about. I know it was an episode, but
it was in the first season.
And the slugs get in their ears, and Mulder thinks it's Scully, and it's not. Oh God, it's so good.
I have so few memories of actual memorable memories of that show, because I had only ever seen the episodes once, and even then I didn't see all of them because I really liked the show, but I was constantly torn of being like, do I want to watch this episode because I don't like horror? And then sometimes I would just bounce and not watch an episode. But now that I've seen the thing, that seems like a fun thing to go back and watch.
Definitely.
Let's get together and marathon it.
Marathon what? All of X-Files?
All of the X-Files.
I rewatched it like 3 years ago. I rewatched all 10 seasons and the movies because Jacqueline had never seen it, and we sat and watched them all right before we moved here. So I guess it was about 3 years ago. And it's you know what? I mean, sure, the last season or two it hurts. It falls apart a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Not to say that, you know what, like there's a couple good episodes in those later seasons, especially when they got back to the one-off format, like when it wasn't bogged down in the conspiracy. So the last 2 seasons are a little rough, but there's a couple gems in there. But yeah, it holds up. I mean, X-Files especially seasons like 1 through 4. I mean, they hold up strong. I
didn't like it when they came back, like a couple years ago. Those two
for like 6. Was it 2 seasons? It wasn't very many episodes. It was
God, I forgot about that. Yeah, Karen and I didn't care for that either.
The first season of it was only like 6 episodes, but then I think they tried to do more in the second season, and yeah, it was not good.
So the 6 episodes had a couple things in it I enjoyed so much. It was a little rough. Again, it was on par probably with seasons 9 and 10, where like overall, whatever, not amazing, but there were some gems, and they referenced back to how Scully can't die, and God, it was just so good. She was like, "Remember, I'm the one who can't die," and it just fucking got me. I was like, "That's right," because that whole thing. Oh God, so good. In the episode with Peter Boyle, where he says it, he's like, "Oh, you can't die." He's like, "Oh, brilliant. Such a good show." Anyway, that was only 2 TV shows. The third TV show, I actually can't tie this back into this, but I'm just going to say it. Night Court's back, and I loved it.
I was actually going to ask you if you had watched was the first 1 or 2 episodes?
2. They aired 2 episodes. I don't have cable, so we're watching it. We have an app. I think it's on like Peacock or I don't know, some app we have. And there was 2 episodes on there, so I assume they've aired 2 episodes on TV. It will probably get canceled because they did a great job of making a early 90s, late 80s, early 90s? I don't remember when Night Court was out. Whatever, 89, 90, something like that. They made a TV show from that era, and it's not the norm or the accepted format or sensibility of a current day TV show. So I'm
84.
84? Holy crap, I didn't realize it was that old. Okay. So anyway, this new, I don't know if you guys watched it, I feel like they did a great job of trying to make a late 80s TV sitcom. And they did it. The jokes aren't hysterical. Like the writers could step it up a notch on the jokes. Not that they're not landing, they're just not, it's a bunch of B jokes. So they could up the writing a little bit. The cast is fine. The 1 or 2 of them are underwhelming. But the main girl's fine, and the Dan Fielding is back, and by God, I'm enjoying the crap out of it. I'm sure it'll get canceled, but it's just...
I'm not so sure it's going to get canceled because it's getting pretty universal acclaim for exactly what you're saying. That it is, I believe it's actually shot before a live studio audience, which most sitcoms are not anymore.
I don't think any are anymore.
Yeah, and they actually went so far as to film this in front of a live studio audience, and the fact that it is very true to the original to a fault, people seem to be really responding well to it. It's been getting a lot of positive buzz, at least in the world that I pay attention to. I'm interested in seeing it too, because I used to love Night Court. I used to watch this all the time. I haven't seen the original Night Court in ages, and I know that very depressing number of the original cast is unable to come back due to being no longer living.
I feel like that doesn't stop people anymore. I don't know what the problem is. You hear somebody died and they come out with 7 more albums over the next 10 years, and it's like, what is happening? I don't understand. Or 6 more movies. It's like, but yes, you're right. Most of them are dead. But Bull's not, and he wasn't invited back. I don't know what that's about. That's some bullshit.
Just CGI them.
Yeah.
CGI everybody.
Maybe he's got health issues or something. He's got to be old, but I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know Bull was still alive. And
he does a lot of he does a lot of voiceover work for like video games and stuff. He's still out there kicking, but if he's only doing voiceover work, he might not be. I don't know. Could have health issues. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. You guys moved on to Night Court, and I still got more Thing stuff.
All right, get back to the Thing,
sorry.
Then let's wrap it up because holy shit, I'm tired. But yeah, what else you got? The only other thing I got is that they didn't kill the black guy first.
They killed one of them, but there was 2 black guys, and one of them made it all the way to the end.
All the way to the end, yeah.
All right. Well, before we talk about the end, because that's one of the things on my list. I guess. I guess I'd be remiss if we wrap this up without talking about these 2 more things and plus the end. But the 2 more things are sort of related in that one goes into the other. One thing is, I guess I thought we were going to talk more about the practical effects because I love them so much and I nerd out about them so much. But
they're so gross.
Well, I guess the one that is the most famous, most infamous, is where Norris has a heart attack and they put him on the table and Dr. Copper's using the defibrillator and it just his chest opens up and just fucking eats his arms, and then his head drips off and falls on the floor and turns into a little spider monster. So like that to me is just the most amazing thing without computers, like there's like everything is computers now, like I watched a trailer for like the new like Indiana Jones movie or something, and like somewhere towards the end of that trailer he's like there's like some cars in the street and he's like hopping from one car to the other car, and like you look at it and you're like, that's all computers. Like that's Harrison Ford in a big green room in Burbank with like 2 other green things, and he's hopping from one green thing to another green thing.
No, that's another dude with Harrison Ford's face CG'd onto it.
Right, sure.
He's not doing that shit.
Yeah, exactly. But like this movie, like you just gotta look at it and you go like, they had to get all those things there. Like even the beginning with the dog and the helicopter, it's like you had to go out there and get a helicopter and get a dog, like, you know what I mean? Like now, at least one of those things would be CG. Like, even if they had the helicopter, they're like, oh, we'll make a CGI dog, or something like that. Right. Like in Last Crusade, like when Harrison Ford is on that tank and, like they're in the desert and stuff, it's like, well, they had to get a tank and cars and horses and like bring all that stuff out to the desert, like that's why these things from the 80s look so big and magical, because like, they knew that then they just had to do it, you know, and it looks cool. And yeah, with this movie, the practical effects, like it was like, how do we make this happen? So when they do that, scene where the guy's chest opens up, right? So that's the guy that plays Norris on the table, and they have made a rig. They have made a machine that's going to open up like that, right? And it's just his chest and his legs and stuff. Like he's sort of under the table, and it's really his neck and his head and his arms, and the chest and the rest of the dummy sort of fits, you know, up, you know, where his neckline is, right? And so this rig that they built into the table opens up like that. It's got like hydraulic jaws that open up, and then underneath that like hydraulic jaw chomper thing, there was, you know, probably like a slime cannon and a big fan and stuff like that, because after it opens up, it shoots all that stuff up. It's like a slime geyser, right? But when Copper puts the defibrillator on his chest, and then it opens up and it eats his arms, they got a dude that was a double amputee, and they made like fake arms. Like they made like arms out of like wax and you know, like silicone and stuff like that, that when this hydraulic press chomped down on it, it would like break these arms, you know, even so much that it had like wax bones and like fake blood in it and stuff like that. And then they made a mask of the other dude, the dude that played Copper, and they put it on this double amputee. So a lot of this is the magic of editing, you know, like he puts his arms on there, the chest opens up, you know, then it cuts to the real guy's face reacting, you know, then it chomps down on his arms, you know, it cuts to his real face reacting, and then in the long shot, it's this double amputee where his arms break off, and like at that point, you're not really looking at the face, and he's kind of, you know, looking up a little bit, so it kind of disguises it, but like, you know, that sort of always fascinated me, like all of the steps they had to go through to get this thing, and then like the same thing with the head, like the head falls onto the floor, so they had to make a mold of that guy's head. There must be no less than 3 heads, right? Because like when the head sprouts the legs and the stalks, it's they put the stalks and everything and the legs out of this thing, and then they pull it down into the floor, right? So it's like it's set up like that bug, and they pull that stuff back down into the floor, and they just run that scene in reverse. They run the camera in reverse, and it looks like this head is sprouting legs and stalks. And then it must be a different head that's like a little remote control car where they're like driving it around the room and stuff. So like, you know, that's like hours and hours and days of shooting just that one scene, you know, like just that 5 minutes of screen time, you know, to do that effect. Like the amount of work that went into it was staggering.
And it all holds up pretty well, all things considered. Like movies that from that era genuinely look a lot worse. Like you can really see the strings on things. Not literally always, but that just as an expression. You can usually see this. You know, you can see the zippers on the outfits on some of the stuff from that era. And those effects were disgusting and off-putting, but they were very, very impressive.
Yeah, John Carpenter did not want to see the zipper on a monster. But yeah, that scene pretty much goes right into the blood test scene, and like I think that's the only other, like, just being the biggest, coolest scene in the movie. Like that was, I guess, one I wanted to ask you about, like what your impressions of that was.
Which one? The one where the head comes off and runs away, or the one where the chest opens?
No, so after the scene where the chest opens and the head runs away and stuff like that, you know, once they burn that, you know, creature, and they've all, they don't necessarily calm down, but they're all still yelling at each other. But that's when that, like, the scene right after that is when McCready announces his idea that, like, hey, I had this idea watching this right now that every part of this is its own living being, and every part of it would run away from a hot needle, and that they do the blood test. And, like, I don't know, I think that's the best scene in the whole movie. Like, I just wanted somebody to talk about the blood test.
Yes. So look, you want to talk about a scene that builds tension and suspense, right? Because we as the audience, we don't know the outcome. And honestly, they've given you enough that you kind of expect the sheriffy guy, right? I mean, you kind of think it's him, right? And so does McCready. McCready makes it clear, and maybe that's why, maybe that's the main thing they give us that makes us think that, is that McCready thinks it and he's our guy, right? But the scene does a remarkably good job of bringing you into a stressed out situation that they all just went through in the scene before, and now here's a possible solution, but we have to do it one at a time. And then you're building stress, you're building suspense, you're in the moment with these people. As you're going through it, they're hitting you with these other emotions that aren't even necessary for what they're doing, right? So they're building up to this climax of, they're like, who is it, who isn't it, and we're checking, and you're stressed, you're in it, and then as they're doing that, they check the first guy. I think the first one they do is like Windows, and he's okay. So then there's a relief, right? And even that character is relieved, which is weird because he's human. Why is, like, he knew he was human, didn't he? But, like, they test his blood and he goes, whew, and you're like, yeah, it's just a stressful freaking situation, right?
Well,
and
because
then
they don't know if you're infected, if you know you're infected.
Right.
They don't even know that at that point.
Right. So Windows is relieved, right? And you as the audience are relieved. And then he starts testing the dead body people, right? And you find out the guy he just shot in the head was human. And, like, they go by it pretty quick, but he's like, you freaking killed that dude, and he was straight up human, right? And it's like, well, that's kind of like this whole, Pandora's box of, like, dark shit, but, like, no time to think about that right now because we're testing the next guy. Here we go. What about this guy? Oh, look, that guy's a monster. And our flamethrowers failed us, right? So, like, it does such a good job of, like I said, building tension, building suspense, dragging us, the audience, into where they are, and then hitting you with so much more than we deserved as an audience. They were just like, here's a bunch of other emotions, and let's just keep it on going. It's a phenomenal scene.
I remember watching it, and he was like, the first time the blood shot out and turned into a whole thing, it was pretty startling. So, like, then he starts testing the blood again, but he doesn't hold it away from himself when he does it. He's like, all right, time to test this one, and his face is all up in there like, let's see what happens. Like, you just saw what happens. Don't you want to, like, just hold it away from you a little bit before you do? Like, you now know, this isn't Wilford Brimley with the gloves. You have now seen exactly what the consequences are of doing this too close to yourself. Like, shit went south in a big bad way. Hold it away from yourself. Do something other than put your face all up in that shit, you moron.
I'm glad you brought up, Sean, the killing of Clark, the murder of Clark, right? That Clark tries to take the flamethrower and McCready shoots him, and then when it's revealed he's not the thing, like, Childs is like, that makes you a murderer, McCready. I love the way that the blood test is edited, right? Because, like you're right, the tensions are so high, but then once it's revealed that the test works, it's just incredible how quick they are to throw in with him, right? Like he just shot somebody, right? And they but, like, then once there's something to unite against, it's like, all right, like, McCready's our guy, right? Like, I love how it's edited where, like, he tests somebody's blood, they are found to be, that it didn't react, right? And then in the next shot, they don't show anybody being untied or anything like that. The next shot, that person is standing next to him with a gun, like, I love the efficiency and just like sort of like symbolism of that. Uh, you know, and it all culminating then in Gary being the last one and being fucking tied up there and having what's his face, Palmer, uh melt before his eyes and like jump up to the ceiling and like have his head open and like eat another guy. And then Gary goes like, if you could, what does he say, if you can manage it, I'd like to not spend the rest of the winter tied to this fucking chair. Like, incredible scene. Incredible.
Scene.
Also, I am told that like, like when the book was written, and it's like the thing could be anybody that, because the book was like written in like the 30s or something, that was like a little bit of a like an analogy for communism, right? Like they look just like us, but like who is it? Who's a communist? I think when they were making this movie in the 80s, it was like the height of the AIDS epidemic and stuff like that. Like there was a lot of this stuff with like, all right, like people look just like you and me, but like what's inside us? What's in our blood?
Right.
Well, what else you got?
Oh, just the ending, yeah.
All right, let's talk the ending then.
Well, in the 50s one, they defeat the thing. They win. They kill it, and then a bunch of people live, right? Like 5 or 6 people live, and they like get on the radio, and they're like,
there's only a handful that die in the 50s one. It's most of them.
Most of them live, right? Yeah, and they're like, we win. Watch the skies. Blah blah blah.
It's a great line. Watch the skies.
Yeah. I mean, I think what Carpenter sets up with McCready, and that like oh, you think this is how the game is played thing? Like you think this is the rules? Like I'm not above burning it all down. I think Carpenter's ending is so good, and I love the ambiguousness of it. I love that it's like, yeah, there's these 2 guys sitting in the snow, and one of them could be the thing, and we don't know.
But it doesn't matter now because one of them went scorched earth. So maybe one of them is the thing. Who cares now?
There's been a lot of talk about that. Like, is it McCready? Is it Childs? And like also a lot of internet hoo-ha.
It's not McCready. He just got like the scene before. We watched him throw like the same scene. We watched him throw like a Molotov cocktail or a stick of dynamite or whatever and blow up the thing.
Yeah, I don't know why. Right, like, yeah, I suppose you're right. It can't be McCready. Childs kind of abandons his post. He walks off. It was like, where did he go? And then there's like been some discussion that like they're like, oh, you can see McCready's breath, but you can't see Childs' breath. And it's like, well, it just like you can. It's just it's not as pronounced as McCready's breath. Like there's been a lot of people trying to pick it apart, or like or that McCready offers him a drink and Childs takes it, and it's like, oh, like is that a test that he was like, we all said we were gonna not drink out of, that we weren't gonna share drinks or eat out of cans or whatever. But it's also like, yeah, like we're in the snow and we're fucked. Like have a drink. You know what I mean? Like there's been like every little piece of that has been picked apart. Like what does it mean? And it's like you could take any of it either way. And I think the fact that you don't know is such a better way to end it. Like and like I think John Carpenter has even said like, yeah, one of them is the thing, but like I'm not going to tell you who.
No, it's a great ending. I have I have a hard time not look, Kurt Russell's my guy, right? And John Carpenter is one of my favorites, and the two of them together, I'm watching it. I'm watching the movie from Kurt Russell, right? Like that's the hero of all of these, right? So everything I'm seeing from his perspective. So when I see the end of that movie, like when I just watched it, I see from his perspective, this guy across from me is either human or the thing. It doesn't matter now. I already won. So whether it's the human or the thing, we're both fucked. Let's have a drink. Like, I feel like McCready doesn't care. He's like, all right, if you're the thing, let's spend our last couple minutes here having a drink together. The thing. If you're Childs, then hey, you won too. Good on you.
That little laugh and
mindset
that
of not
smile.
caring.
That laugh and that smile that he has plays so well, after they take a drink.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's great. It's great.
And then fades out to fires and that like synth bass that comes back in, that like boom boom. Like it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is without a doubt an extremely well done movie that I did not enjoy.
In case that's your first foray into Carpenter, while most of Carpenter's movies have a tinge of horror or sci-fi, some of them get a lot lighter. Like Big Trouble in Little China really isn't a horror or sci-fi movie. There's some interesting special effects work, but you wouldn't call it horror or sci-fi. Like it's not at all like that.
Yeah, I don't think I have seen any other John Carpenter stuff, so.
You haven't seen They Live either? Oh, but if you didn't like Thing, you probably won't like They Live either. But, oh, God, it's so good.
It's one of the reasons I didn't see it in the first place. Like,
yeah.
I kind of had a feeling I knew what kind of movie it was going to be, and even if I appreciate it for what it is, I don't necessarily want, like, that's not what I want to do with my time.
No, I hear you. There's lots of stuff like that there's all kinds of like dramas and crime stories and stuff like TV shows and movies that I'm like, look, this is good, but I tried to watch Mad Men. Everybody said it was great, and I watched a couple episodes, and it's really well done. I get that it's really well done. I have no desire to watch that. It's just, it didn't do anything for me. I was like, I don't want to spend my time like this.
Happens with me with video games all the time. I'm sure Horizon Zero Dawn's a great game. I've tried putting about an hour into it, and I was like, this is not for me. It's very well crafted, but it's not for me. And not everything has to be, and that's fine.
Sure.
And I am really glad I watched this movie because of how important of a cultural milestone it is, and it really is a good movie. But it just happens to be in a genre that is not to my liking.
All right.
Well, I'm sorry if I went down nerd rabbit holes, Chris.
No, everything you said was fascinating,
Yeah.
and I'm very interested in the movie. Like, and now that I've seen it, like all the stuff you were saying was very interesting, and I almost wonder what I would make of it, seeing it for a second time, because now I know what's going to happen. I know that there's no silver lining. I know that there's no happy ending, and I know who's going to live and who's going to die. I almost wonder if I would be more interested in seeing it a second time, but. I'm watching the movie, and I'm like actively not enjoying myself, but also like part of me is, because it was riveting. It was very interesting. There was never a point where I was bored by the movie. It was just like, God, I don't want to see this. Like, everyone's gonna die. There is no good ending here. Like, it's the best ending is that it might not get away. It might not go and destroy the entire world. That's the best possible ending.
But that's
here.
what I'm saying. Kurt Russell, like McCready's, it was a good ending. It was a happy ending. It was a Wizard of Oz ending.
Well, but the whole thing, didn't they? How was if the thing was one of the two of them? How was it not going to survive? Like, wasn't the whole thing like? In the cold, the thing is fine. It'll just hibernate again until somebody else shows up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I know it doesn't make a lot of sense. I did catch that this time. I was like, you know what? I mean, he blows up the ship. Okay, and he burns everything up. But yeah, if that guy is the thing, then it will just freeze into the ice. And it didn't make a lot of sense.
But we don't know. We don't
But we
know.
don't know.
You know, so like, again, there's options, but leaving it ambiguous is like, did they win?
Yeah.
Didn't they win? Is one of them the thing? Are they both, human? Like, we won't know, and that's all you're gonna get.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so mixed bag on this one. Well, I don't even know if it's a mixed bag. Me and Paul certainly think everybody should watch it. Kris seems to think people should watch it, but you didn't love it because it's not your genre.
That's it exactly. This gets a big thumbs up for me. I can't say this is bad. Like, I just can't. It was good. It's just not my flavor.
Sure.
Kris, I appreciate you taking the journey. I mean, I do say that it, like, every time you watch it, it just gets better. So, like, there's that. But, like, you're right. Not every movie is for everyone, and not every video game is for everyone, and not every video game can be Goat Simulator. So
That's true.
So there's your
back to
review.
Goat Simulator. All right, we got to figure out a you movie and go to bed.
Oh, Paul has to address Hollywood first.
Oh.
And then
Dun, 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 dun.
I'll address Hollywood quickly. Yeah, I'll give you time, Kris, to put in your magical underscoring of my address to Hollywood, but I can tell you it will be quick and direct. I'll just say, related to this movie, The Thing, that the guy that did the special effects, his name was Rob Bottin. And he's the one that came up with, the effect that I explained, the jaws that chomped off that guy's hands, like all of the tentacles that came out of dogs breaking open, people's heads breaking open, like, he's the one that was sort of the magic behind this.
And Hollywood, you should foot the bill for his therapy.
Well, yes, Sean. When this shoot was over, and this was a grueling shoot for him, sometimes 10, 12, 14-hour days, him having to, like, reset effects that took multiple hours. Sometimes he would sleep on set, apparently. Like, he put his livelihood into this movie, and when it was over, he was hospitalized for 11 days. With, like, a psychotic break and, like, a stomach ulcer and, like, all kinds of other, like, health problems.
My joke is poor now. Just terrible.
So, one thing I would say to Hollywood is, like, take care of your people. They work hard. Like, give them what they're worth and, like, make your days humane. But, like, also, like, practical effects are cool. We don't have to have everything that's, like, green warehouses in Burbank, right? Like, I feel like this movie shows you that, like, this stuff can still look cool 40 years later. Like, let's cool it with the computers a little bit, Hollywood. Like, give us more cool effects. So that's my address to Hollywood.
Well, amusingly enough, there is a chunk of Hollywood that is moving in that direction, and it again started with Star Wars. When The Force Awakens came out and J.J. Abrams and company decided to use as many practical effects as they possibly could, and the reception to the movie was, it was a massive success. There were a lot of TV shows and movies that started to take notice of, practical effects are awesome, and if we combine them with the technology that we have now, we can do things that we couldn't even have imagined back in the day. Do you remember when Force Awakens came out? I remember the first time I saw that BB-8 wasn't a visual effect. Like, that blew my freaking mind. Like, I remember seeing the trailer and just assuming that was CG, because what a weird design. And then I saw it, a physical thing rolling around. I was like, you have got to be kidding me. That's insane. And now you see that in modern Star Wars productions and other productions are starting to lean a little bit more into using practical effects when they can and when they can afford them, because you're right, there is so much value to that. There is so much value to the modern technology that is involved in CG and everything. And in fact, not to dive too much into Star Wars because I'm a lunatic, but like that whole Expanse thing, I think the Expanse, is that what they call it? I don't remember what it's called. The volume, that's it. They created for Mandalorian, of like this new kind of way of green screening that's much more tactile, is like super cool. But then Andor was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to use sets. And that show feels so much more real because everything's actually there. And you are starting to see more of that in modern stuff. Not enough. I agree that more things should be practical whenever possible, but the fact that there is a movement towards more practical effects, I think is extremely heartwarming and wonderful.
Hear, hear.
Sláinte.
Word. All right, let's talk about U movies. It is time for the letter U. Who wants to go first?
All right, so yeah, to be fair, I haven't put a lot of thought into this. I was so wrapped up in this movie because I was excited by it that I think my U was a little bit of an afterthought. But yeah, my U movie is gonna piss off my wife. But I think it's okay because I have a plan to make it up to her later in the alphabet as we come to the last couple letters. But yeah, if we pick it, she won't like it. It has an actor in it that she doesn't like. There are two actors that she doesn't like, and I don't know why. One of them is Russell Crowe. She doesn't like him. And the other one is Kevin Costner. So like when we went to see the Superman, what was it, Man of Steel, where like Russell Crowe was Space Dad and Kevin Costner was Earth Dad. Like, I didn't tell her that they were in the movie because I knew she wouldn't go see it. Like I was like, you want to go? Like, it was like, what do you want to do? Like let's see that Superman movie. You know, like who's in it? Like, don't worry about it. You know, and like when it started, and like Russell Crowe was all like, oh, I'm Space Dad. You know, like then she's like, oh, and I was like, oh God, just wait. You know, and then like they get to Earth, and like Costner's like one of the first people you see. I think he's like chastising like Clark for like saving that bus or something like that, like showing his powers, and like he comes on screen and she just goes, ugh. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. So yeah, she doesn't like Kevin Costner, and he's in this movie. The movie has Kevin Costner. It has Sean Connery, Andy Garcia, Robert De Niro. You know what it is, Sean?
Oh, yeah, that was one of my two choices. Remember I said I had two U movies picked? This is one of them.
Yeah.
So that makes it easy. Yeah.
Untouchables is my U movie.
All right, that was my backup choice, so I guess that's off the table.
Oh my God, I didn't think anyone was going to choose this. You guys both considered this?
I thought Kris might not have seen it.
I haven't, and we were talking about that when me and Greg were looking for U movies afterwards, and this is one that came up. It was like, yeah, that's a possibility. It's not my number one U choice, but it is if for some reason my number one U choice was picked by one of you, which I don't think it's gonna be. This was my backup.
I'm gonna go next in case my backup is Kris's primary. Now that you've knocked out his backup and my primary in one fell swoop.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
My backup in case Untouchables got picked, which it did. Uncle Buck. I just haven't watched it in a while.
Yes,
Nice.
What a great movie.
I was like, what if somebody else goes Untouchables? I should have a backup. Let's go Uncle Buck.
Fantastic.
I feel like I'll
Great
have a lot to say about it. I haven't watched it in a while.
Love that movie. All right, well, mine is I love this movie. I must have watched it like 5 or 6 times when it finally came out on video back in the day. It is Chris Pine and Denzel Washington on a fucking train. It's called Unstoppable. It is one of the stupidest movies I've ever seen, and I absolutely love this movie. It is just awesome.
I haven't seen it. I'm aware of it, but I didn't see it.
I
God, it's so
remember it. I don't think it left a lasting impression on me, but
oh my God, Karen and I must have watched this We watched it so much because it's so dumb and it's so fun. Oh my god, there's like a half an hour dedicated to just like making one turn. Oh my god.
I remember that. There's a lot about like, here comes the turn.
Shit, it's his turn. We're going too fast. We gotta slow down the train. How are we gonna slow down the train? The fucking turn's coming. Oh, god, I love this movie. Yeah, Unstoppable. It's my U pick.
You know what I almost went with was there was a movie apparently came out in like I don't remember now, like 2009 or 10 or 11. It wasn't very old. Just called the U movie. And when I started looking up movies, like I first typed in U movies or whatever, there was a movie that just came out that was called the U movie in 2010. It won some awards, and I was like, oh, I have no idea what this is. Maybe I should just blind go with it. But no, I think these are three fine U movies. I haven't seen Unstoppable, but you know, hey, there's new experiences, there's good experiences, there's old experiences. You know.
All right, I'm ready.
God, I'm not. I need 2 seconds to find this
standing
text.
All right, 3, 2, 1, launch.
According to my phone, my vote went in first.
Oh my god.
All right, Untouchables it is.
What's wrong with you guys? Stop picking my movies.
Nobody voted for Unstoppable. What the hell?
But it was, yeah.
I'm gonna watch that shit anyway.
I might watch it anyway.
I thought Sean's was a shoe-in. Once you said Uncle Buck, I was like, yeah, I could like Uncle Buck. And then I was like, that's obviously, I don't know. I feel like we don't pick Sean's enough. And I was like, that's a great pick. I'm sorry, Sean.
It is a great pick. I love Uncle Buck. Honestly, the only reason I picked Untouchables is because I assumed you guys want me to see it. Like,
it was my primary one. That's what I was going to go with until you went. If I had gone first, I was going to say Untouchables. And the reason I was picking it is because I feel like it's on par with, like, where you yell at Kris for not seeing, like, Jaws or Rocky or something. Like, it's really that good a movie. Like, I'm not saying it's better than Jaws or Rocky. I think Jaws and Rocky are probably better. But it's a phenomenal movie. I haven't seen it in probably 3 or 4 years, but it's one of those movies that I've seen 20, 30 times, and every time I see it, I'm like, this is how you make a movie. Like, they did everything absolutely right in this movie.
Sherry's going to be so pissed off.
well, I'm excited. I think that was one of the ones that Greg was pretty excited to see on the list. So I think Greg will be happy. And isn't that what it's all about?
Making Greg happy.
That's why we do it.
At the end of the day. All right, so that's your homework, everybody. The Untouchables. We'll be back in 1 month to talk about our U movie, and I'll probably try and find a way to watch the Train movie as well, because it's been way too many years since Karen and I have watched that stupid movie, and it was a good time. Highly recommend it. I just watched Uncle Buck, I think, last year too, so I also wasn't itching to see it again because I've seen it pretty recently.
I'm probably going to watch it anyway. This is a good movie.
You should. It's great. Absolutely holds up. John Candy's a masterpiece of a person.
Here's a quarter. Go downtown and have a rat and all that thing
it's
off
late.
Your face.
It's time to wrap this shit up. I just think about that giant pancake all the time. Like, I have a pizza peel. I should really do that one of these days. No, I shouldn't. That's a terrible idea. But anyway, a theater near you is part of the Geekade Podcast Network, and if you'd like to get in touch with us to share your comments, movie suggestions, or whatever, you can send us an email at mail@geekade.com. We can also be found on most social media outlets and the official Geekade Discord server, all of which can be found in our show notes. If you'd like early access to this podcast and several other on the Geekade Podcast Network, check out the Geekade Patreon, linked to in the show notes. There's also apparently going to be an entire webcam thing-themed post going up. I don't know if you guys have been shooting video footage, but yay. It helps keep the show running and our site shiny and clean. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time in theater near you.
You know, when I was a kid and got a hold of a nickel, I thought I was rich. I didn't turn up my nose at pennies either. Today, some folks won't even bend to pick 'em up. Well, here's a bowl of steaming Quaker oatmeal. And I can't think of a healthier way to start the day. Cost you 1 nickel and 4 pennies. So if you can't be bothered with nickels and pennies, throw 'em in a jar. Start an oatmeal fund. Quaker Oats. It's the right thing to do. Not too expensive either.